strong new trade deals, let's include USMCA in that, that's going to really help the economy and wages as well.
So, Larry, let's unpack some of that, because you mentioned some important things. Has China consulted with the United States then? Have they requested some exceptions to that purchase agreement that you've made just a month ago?
Not formally. I mean, they're consulting because the two leaders have talked about it and staff-level discussions. Nothing formal. The point is that obviously they're in a shut-in regarding their industrial plants in a number of cities and so forth. But President Xi apparently reassured President Trump in this phone call that while there might be some delays in the purchase of American exports, the markers of $200 billion over the next couple of years will, in fact, be met.
To be clear, though, Larry, do you think they can meet the targets for this year? Never mind over the 2 years. I'm just wondering this year whether we're setting ourselves up for failure here on the Chinese side, maybe, as well as the US side, because, as you can see, large chunks of that economy is shut down. How on earth are they going to meet those targets anytime soon?
Well, look, we're not setting ourselves up for failure. We're setting ourselves up for a mild delay. Look, I'm not a medical expert, okay? A lot of people think this virus is going to run 5 or 6 months. Some people are saying that the rate of increase, the rate of its spreading, has already slowed down. The World Health Organization apparently disagrees, so I'll stay with the official view that it's not yet slowing down. Having said all that, the issue here is not an economic issue. It's not a trade policy issue. It's obviously a public health issue. We are doing what we can, along with the WHO. We've sent our best CDC experts over there. Secretary Azar is monitoring this thing all day long, every day, 24/7. So that's really a separate issue. There is no failure, because the export schedules and the Chinese purchase schedules will continue literally as soon as physically possible.
So, Larry, as you know, a public health issue can, of course, become an economic problem, and I won't expect you to talk to the medical side of things. Neither of us are medical professionals, but I would like to talk to you about the diplomatic side of things between the US and China right now. This is a quote from the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman. She said this week, "The US government hasn't provided any substantial assistance to us, but it was the first to evacuate personnel from its consulate in Wuhan, the first to suggest partial withdrawal of its embassy staff, and the first to impose a travel ban on the travelers." Now, on that travel ban, that same Foreign Ministry spokeswoman has followed up today in the last 24 hours. "We deplore and oppose those countries who went against WHO's professional recommendations." Is there any tension there whatsoever between the US and China right now, Larry?
No, and I'll say no emphatically, and I don't know who this spokesperson is. I don't know anything about that. What I want to say is, from day one, when this thing broke, and I was in this room interviewing various media TV outlets, the United States has offered the best public health care experts we have. And we have the best public health system in the world. And we have been working with the World Health Organization. We offered it several times. I guess China has finally accepted that offer. President Trump has told us privately in the Oval, and I think publicly he has said this, we want to be compassionate. We are engaging with China. U.S.-China relations have never been better. Following the conclusion of the Phase 1 trade deal, we were not the first countries, by the way, to issue a travel ban. Russia was ahead of us, and some other countries were ahead of us. I don't know where this spokesperson got what he or she got, but it's not true. And we have taken steps as much as we can do. They had to let us in the country, and I guess now that has been solved with the WHO. This is not about jobs. This is not about trade, companies, whatever. This is about compassion and good public health care. And we have done whatever, we have offered whatever we can offer. So I totally disagree. And that is not, let me emphasize, that was not the thrust of the POTUS-Xi call last night. I got the printouts, the readouts of that call. That was a constructive, cooperative, very friendly call where President Xi was thanking us for our help on the public health care front and assured us that Phase 1 was going to go through. And as I said before, assured us that if there are any delays because of the virus, the Chinese purchases of U.S. exports would be picked up later on.
Larry, her words, not mine. I hear loud and clear, and I can see you're very fired up on this, and quite rightly so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You know, it's like no good deed goes undone or something. I mean, that's just utterly not true.
I get it. I'm going to ask you a sensitive question, though. Do you trust the data coming from China regarding the coronavirus?
Oh, I don't know. I honestly can't answer that. I've seen a lot of speculation in the paper. It's not my job. It's not my role.
But Larry, isn't that the problem, that you don't know, that you can't emphatically say that you do?
Well, look, I will say this. Secretary Azar, pretty smart fella, been in this business a long time. He has said, and I believe Secretary Pompeo, but I know that Alex Azar has said this, that China has shown more transparency during this coronavirus crisis than we've seen in similar problems in the past. That's Secretary Azar's statement. That's about as far as I can go.
Let's talk about a State of the Union and next steps. The President talking about one priority is paramount: reversing decades of calamitous trade policies. You and I talked the other week in Davos. I caught up with the Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross as well. We had some great conversations about Europe and next steps. Larry, what are the next steps? What's the timeline to deal with the issue that is Europe, at least from the administration side of things, in the coming months? What are you looking for?
Very good talks yesterday between Ambassador Lighthizer and Phil Hogan, who's the new EU Trade Commissioner. Hogan's a smart guy. He was formerly the Agriculture Commissioner. I met with him after Bob Lighthizer met with him. The bilat we had in Davos with EU President, the new President von der Leyen, was very constructive. She's got a lot of energy, wants to restart the talks and move things along. President Trump said he'd be delighted to do so. I think there's a lot of new urgency into those talks. I'm not going to go into detail. That's Lighthizer's domain. I will just say that there have been some new proposals put on the table, which could amount to some very positive developments. I'm not here to do details. I'm not here to do timing. That's up to our trade ambassador.
Larry, I thought you were here for the details.
The talks have been started.
I thought, monthly, that's what this conversation was about, that you give me the details.
Well, you know, Jonathan, you're an awful good man, and you've been great to me. I can tell you what I can tell you, and then we have to go ... to finish the sentence.
I understand that. Let's talk about one final issue, though, and it's on Europe. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross said the Section 232 investigation had completed last year, the end of last year, as you know, and that they determined that it was a national security risk, and that was the imports of European autos into the United States. And then he said to me that the President decided that it is a risk, that we've decided as an administration that it is a risk, but we're going to negotiate. Why are we negotiating around national security risks? It's either a national security risk or it's not, isn't it?
Well, no, I don't think it's quite that straightforward. Look, the Trade Principles Group submitted our report to the President, and he has the authority under Section 232 to take whatever actions that he deems necessary. He has not taken any actions thus far, and I think that whole discussion is on hold for the moment while we work through a good faith effort with respect to the possibility of an EU trade deal. And as I said, those talks are heating up. We had good meeting with the new EU president. Their trade guy, Hogan, was here and had good talks with Lighthizer yesterday. So that's really front and center. I think, we'd like to make a good deal with the European Union. I don't want to speculate on anything right now, except there's a new energy to those talks.
Larry, and we hope that energy transpires, materialises into a positive outcome. Larry Kudlow, always great to see you, to get your thoughts, especially after the payrolls report. Larry Kudlow there, the National Economic Council Director, joining us from Washington, D.C.
That was Jonathan Farrow along with Larry Kudlow, the National Economic Council Director, talking about the strong jobs numbers we had out this morning, and also talking about just the overall economy. Larry Kudlow, rightfully so, taking a little bit of a victory lap there as it relates to the strength of the overall economy. To kind of help us parse some of the numbers and what it means for the markets, we welcome Carl Riccadonna, Chief U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics, and Bloomberg Stocks Editor Dave Wilson. So, Carl, let's start with you. Again, Larry Kudlow, rightfully so, very upbeat about the labor situation in this country. What are some of the key takeaways from you that you saw from these numbers?
Sure. Well, obviously a strong report, and the payroll gain was stronger than even the most optimistic forecast in the Bloomberg survey. But we have to look at some of the underlying details. And so one thing we can see is that there's an anomaly here in construction hiring, which is no surprise. We had a very favorable building environment weather-wise for much of the East Coast. Normally those construction workers kind of get laid off in maybe November, December, or January. This year, with it being so warm on the East Coast, now mind you, not as warm as the 65-degree temperatures in Antarctica at the moment, but T-shirt weather. Lisa's looking at me in shock. But nonetheless, that meant that those layoffs didn't happen, and so that kind of throws a monkey wrench into the normal seasonal adjustment of the data. Still, we can't say blame the weather, it's not a strong report. It's a strong report, but not as strong as that 225 number would have you believe. It's more like 190-ish when we adjust for that weather factor, which is what we're looking for February payrolls to come in.
Which was still above the sort of consensus heading in, which was 165. Before we get to Dave Wilson and talk about some of the stock movements, I want to just get the market reaction here, which is negative. You saw stocks actually take a turn lower, and you saw bond yields head lower, price up. The yield curve, the gap between 2- and 10-year Treasury yields contracting back down near the closest, tightest range that we've seen in recent months. Why?
This is good news is bad news, and so the strength of this jobs report really removes the wiggle room for the Fed to try to maybe edge towards easier policy. Not that they have been trying to, but this kind of just puts the final coat of paint on their rigidity.
Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, again, kind of a weak opening here to the market. What's kind of getting your attention here?
Well, the coronavirus and the sort of company-specific examples of how it's playing out in terms of business. You see Royal Caribbean down 3.5% and other cruise lines lower as well. Royal Caribbean has this ship off the coast of Bayonne, New Jersey that...
Port of call.
Absolutely. Where something like a dozen Chinese passengers supposedly have symptoms of the virus, at least according to some of the news reports around places like NJ.com. So you see that group lower. You see Wynn Resorts down. They're talking about how they're losing $2.5 million a day because of the shutdown of casinos in the Chinese city of Macau, all tied into the coronavirus. And, even Fiat Chrysler, the way that they've talked about the potential for having to temporarily close a production line in Europe because they can't necessarily get supplies from China. Fiat shares at the moment down 2.8%. So, lots of little specific examples of how the virus is playing out here.
Yeah, and we can add to that list Burberry and Canada Goose both cutting some of the outlooks. Actually, Burberry scrapping their forecast altogether on the heels of the coronavirus. Before we let you go, Carl Riccadonna, I do just want to get your sense. You said it wasn't as good as the headline might read, although it's still very good. And I'm wondering, we did see better than expected wage gains. What else could people be looking at that's setting markets lower?
I don't think there's real signs of weakness here that would justify that market reaction. So I think the market reaction is, the reduced likelihood of the Fed to respond to conditions. That being said, data can be slow-moving relative to a fast-changing, fluid situation, whether it's geopolitics or coronavirus or whatnot. And so I think the Fed is going to be leaning more heavily on their industry contacts, the beige book, the anecdotal evidence coming in from producers and whatnot who are having the supply chain disruptions and trying to really adjust in real time and not wait for the data to respond.
Carl Riccadonna, Chief U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics. Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks Editor for Bloomberg, joining us here. Really interesting to get that take, this idea. If the Fed does not cut rates, markets are disappointed.
Yes.
And that seems to be good news is bad news. Right now, let's head down to 991 Studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager there with world and national headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, New Hampshire's first in the nation primary will give some Democratic presidential hopefuls a second chance, and tonight's debate gives them a fresh opportunity to shine in the national spotlight. Bloomberg's Bob Moon reports.
Iowa's reporting delays having robbed the emerging leaders of significant momentum. The chance for a breakout debate moment just ahead of the New Hampshire vote takes on added importance. Also, the field might grow by the time of the next debate in Nevada later this month. A Democratic Party rule change gives late arrival Michael Bloomberg a better chance to qualify for future debates, something Bernie Sanders complains lets him buy his way in.
I think that is an absolute outrage and really unfair.
Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. Bob Moon, Bloomberg Radio.
And you can hear tonight's debate. It starts at 8 p.m. Wall Street time here on Bloomberg Radio. The coronavirus death toll is now past 600, more than 31,000 confirmed infections. 61 of those are on a Princess cruise ship under quarantine in Yokohama, Japan. Carrie Maniscalco is one of about 400 Americans stuck on that ship.
We can't order service. Basically, the food just comes at certain times of the day. There's no specific time that it comes.
President Trump spoke with China's Xi Jinping about the outbreak overnight, and on Twitter, the president praised the Chinese leader for what he called his strong response to the outbreak. Today, the president heads to North Carolina for his first trip outside Washington since his impeachment acquittal. He'll speak at an event in Charlotte focused on economic opportunities in low-income neighborhoods. Former Tea Party Congressman Joe Walsh tells CNN he's ending his long-shot bid to challenge President Trump in a GOP primary, saying he would back any Democrat, even Bernie Sanders. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Have you ever thought, I wish I'd had that information sooner?
What does this tell us about the state of deal making?
Let's fix that.
One unprofitable company plus another doesn't make a profitable company.
Carol Mazur.
Talk to us about real-world applications.
Jason Kelly.
Remind us what the potential is for everyday folk.
Bloomberg Business Week.
Vice President of Exploratory Science is one of the cooler titles.
Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern. On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg Business Week, now live on YouTube.
Hi, everyone. Al Roker here. As a guy with his own catchphrase, I appreciate that after 75 years, Smokey's only said,
only you can prevent wildfires.
But I'm filling in because there's a lot more to report. Like when it's dry or windy. Be careful burning yard waste, because wildfires can even start in your neck of the woods. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Open calendar. What's my schedule looking like?
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an emergency flash flood between Park and First Street.
What? No, that doesn't work. I'm busy then. Decline. Decline.
Floods don't exactly work around your schedule. Disasters don't plan ahead. But you can. It starts with talking to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. So don't wait. Communicate. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Dad, I'm doing the mashed potatoes too.
Do the Albert Bartlett potato mash.
Do the twist.
Do the patatas bravas with a British twist.
Yeah. Do the brown sauce, balsamic and chutney.
Oh, do the melting potato slices.
Do the dishes.
Grab a brand new recyclable bag today and do the Albert Bartlett.
He's got a brand new bag.
WW Weight Watchers Reimagined have a new customised weight loss programme, MyWW, where no foods are off limit. Just fill out a simple assessment and get matched to a plan that suits you. You love eating carbs, cooking at home or eating out? No problem with this new customised plan. Discover which new MyWW plan can make losing weight easier for you. Join now and get 50% off your first 3 months. Offer ends 8th of February. Subscription fees and conditions apply. Mainland UK only. See website for details. For up to 50% off selected floors and beds, and up to an additional £250 off your total flooring order. Carpet Right for life. Terms and conditions apply.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Despite never having used them, Alison Pear Tree was not initially a fan of purple bricks.
Because I heard from my uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker they don't have proper estate agents.
But Alison's uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker was wrong. Purple Bricks have experienced local agents ready to sell your home.
Turns out Martin from Purple Bricks was very knowledgeable. And he didn't charge commission. I've even recommended him to my sister's boyfriend's auntie's hairdresser, Sharon.
Purple Bricks. Book your free valuation today.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing service cost extra.
I've got my own place now, Money. My parents put up the 10% security. And when I keep up my payments, they get it back with interest in 5 years from Barclays. And now we can do whatever we want. Right, Dave? We don't have to tiptoe up the stairs. I can paint the living room purple. Don't look at me like that, Money. It's my house. Barclays Family Springboard Mortgage. Make money work for you.
Your home may be repossessed if mortgage payments are missed. Deposit returned with interest after 5 years if no repayments missed. Subject to application, financial circumstances and borrowing history. T's and C's apply.
The 9 to 5. Remember that? Neither do we. Let's face it, it's far more likely to be an 11 to 8 or a 2 to 10. And some of us never switch off. So, given our working hours are evolving, so should the airlines we rely on for business travel, right? That's why EasyJet offer multiple flights a day to all sorts of European business destinations at a range of times to suit you. Search business travel by EasyJet to find out more.
This is a live message from the Survivalist Network. There are reports of an impending zombie apocalypse reaching London. But don't panic. Our intel shows that for £199 a month with 0% APR representative, you can locally access the Toyota Hilux Invincible, the only vehicle with the build strength to withstand savage hordes of the undead. Once inside your Toyota Hilux, stay on this frequency for updates. You'll be fine.
0% APR representative on new sales of Hilux Invincible over 42 months. £199 per month. Customer deposit of £10,246 when financed through Access Toyota by 31st March 2020. £12,525 optional final payment. Subject status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
Hi, Eddie. Hi, Sid. You know why you're here, right?
Oh, yes. Introducing a new generation to the comedy of Little and Large.
I always knew we were due a comeback.
That's great, guys. So just read the script.
Hi, I'm Sid Little.
And I'm Eddie Large. Specsavers are doing a large sale.
On little hearing aids.
Is that it?
Yeah, great, thanks.
God, we missed our Pilates class for this.
Save up to £400 on selected little hearing aids in the large hearing aid sale at Specsavers. Offer ends 29th of February.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Well, but reversing a trend of the week so far, stocks are down as concern about the economic impact of the coronavirus overshadowed data showing a strong American jobs market. Treasuries are up and oil is down. We look at those numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.4%, down 13. The Dow's down 0.6%, down 180, and the Nasdaq is down 0.5%, down 49. The 10-year is up 17/30 with a yield of 1.58%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is down 0.8% at $50.58 a barrel. COMEX gold's up 0.3% at $15.7450 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.61. The euro $1.969, and the British pound $1.2948. Canada Goose has fallen after the company indicated coronavirus is having a material negative impact and cut its full-year forecast for sales and profit. Canada Goose is down 3.5%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
The initial read of the jobs report that came out this morning was, wow, a blowout number, way exceeding estimates. And as markets digest this 225,000 gain that we saw from the U.S. jobs number, they're going lower with yields lower, price higher on treasuries, and you see equities heading lower as well. Here to explain what's going on, Mike Collins, Senior Investment Officer and Senior Portfolio Manager at PGIM Fixed Income, overseeing more than $800 billion in fixed income assets, and he joins us here in our Interactive Broker Studios. Mike, what's your interpretation of the market response?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about today's number is not the number itself, but the market's response to it, to your point, Lisa, right? And I think the markets are looking through this number. I mean, everybody knows the U.S. economy is the bright spot in the world. Our consumer is in solid shape. Financial conditions have actually become really easy in the U.S. with all the Fed stimulus, lower mortgage rates, lower gasoline prices even, right, with the coronavirus. So it's really bolstering U.S. growth. Everybody knows that. But what's the world going to look like in 3, 6, 12, 24, 36 months from now, and you look at European growth. I mean, Europe is a puddle. Chinese growth is going to be marked down sharply. I don't even know if the markets are fully pricing in the potential risk that this coronavirus becomes more of a global problem, and less so just a Chinese problem. And just going out, indefinitely into the future. I mean, I think the Fed funds rate over the next 10 years is going to be in a range between 0 and 2. It's going to average 1%. So cash is going to give you a 1% return for 10 years. And with the 10-year treasury at 160, there's value there. And I think that's what the markets are grappling with.
So given that low interest rate environment, Mike, kind of where is PGIM thinking about allocating, the fixed income capital pool that you guys have?
Yeah, so in fixed income, you have to be in a barbell, right? On the positive side, like I said, U.S. growth is really strong. There are pockets of value in the bond market. So we are really focused on the higher beta parts of the global credit markets where there is value. We've seen this great divergence in the equity markets.
Higher beta is what?
It's, Greece. It's some single B, triple C rated high yield bonds, some 30-year triple B investment grade corporate bonds where we're seeing a big trend toward delevering in that market. It's certain parts of the emerging market. So you pick your best spots in those areas where you're getting pretty significant spreads and yields and spread tightening potential, and then you barbell that by having high quality bonds on the other side. You have AAA asset backs, which have really attractive spreads, very defensive characteristics, and you don't be shy about buying 30-year treasuries.
So buy everything.
You have a barbell. I think it's the middle of the market that's overvalued. It's the kind of high quality investment grade corporate bonds. It's, believe it or not, the short maturity double B rated high yield bonds that are one of the most overvalued parts of the credit markets. So you're having this weird dislocations in the global bond market, which is very normal, right? I mean, we have this big theme at PGIM Fixed Income about, market segmentation within the global fixed income markets. There are so many different actors and a lot of big institutional players that do things not just for total return reasons, right? There are so many capital constraints and regulatory constraints and guideline constraints that investors do stupid things or things that they have to do, not that they want to do. And we're well positioned to take advantage of that.
So, Mike, the U.S. Treasury is talking about a 20-year bond. How do you guys view that? Because if PGIM's not buying it, it ain't happening. I mean, you guys are so big in the marketplace. What do you think about that 20-year bond?
So, I mean, our biggest clients are insurance companies and pension plans, yep. and there is a hole in the Treasury market, in the corporate market, a liquidity hole between the 10-year and the 30-year. So we think it's really smart that the Treasury has recognized that, and instead of creating another liquidity gap and issuing a 50 or 100-year, they actually made a really smart decision, I think, and to plug that hole and create an on-the-run liquid 20-year Treasury, which will promote more liquidity and more issuance in the corporate market in 20 years. And there is a huge, cash kind of flow gap in pension plans in that 20-year space because it's not easy to plug that. If you have 20-year liabilities, how do you fill that with 20-year assets? It's a really illiquid, off-the-run part of the market, and so this will fill that gap. So I think it's a really smart move by the Treasury.
Mike, what data or development would you have to see to change your view in terms of perhaps going even more into riskier securities or pulling back and just more heavily concentrating your assets in the highest rated credit?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about what's priced in with regard to the probability of the tail risk, right? We came into this year with a very constructive backdrop. We had a very high probability view of what we call exquisite mediocrity, which is kind of a toned-down version of Goldilocks, maybe. But we actually thought there was probably even more upside risk than downside risk at the beginning of this year. And then obviously with global data actually coming in a little bit weaker outside the U.S. with obviously the coronavirus and the potential impact on that. I don't know if that's even been fully felt yet. It feels like that shifted and the tail risk, the downside tail risk, has increased. Right? And I think we'd have to have a sense that it's really going to result in higher credit losses, maybe big earnings declines. So instead of earnings growth running at 0%. Maybe it runs at negative 5% by the time we're at the end of the year. And that would cause us to hedge some of those tail risks.
So just 20 seconds here. When was the last time that you changed your view in terms of the allocation?
Yeah, the last change was by being more constructive, by adding credit risk in the most undervalued parts of the market, because as we came into this year, there were really nascent signs, and they still exist to some extent, that the global manufacturing recession we were talking about last year was bottoming, right? And there are some optimistic signs, and in the U.S., you see it writ large.
Mike Collins, thanks so much for joining us. Mike Collins, Senior Investment Officer and Senior Portfolio Manager for PGIM Fixed Income. They have $809 billion in fixed income under management based but joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio.
I could speak with him all day, and it sort of raises a really good question, which is when's the tipping point, right? Because if you have QE forever and the Fed backstopping the market, risk may look good, even though you do see credit deterioration amid some of the slowing growth globally.
Yeah, absolutely. In the Treasury markets right now, we're looking at the 10-year up 16.30 seconds, pushing that yield down to 1.58% on the 10-year. The 2-year at 1.41%. Along with Lisa Bromwitz, I'm Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The job market is off to a strong start in 2020. Payrolls increased by 225,000 in January. The unemployment rate edged up to 3.6%. Stocks are dropping, however, the concerns about the coronavirus outweighing the strong jobs data. Uber is forecasting its first ever quarterly profit by the end of the year. That's months earlier than planned. It's a signal from the ride-hailing service that cost-cutting measures are exceeding expectations. It's not surprising that these two companies are thinking about hooking up. Bloomberg has learned the owner of the dating app Tinder, Match Group, has approached rival Meet Group about a takeover. And film studio Lionsgate plans to center a new franchise around Knives Out after the movie smashed box office expectations over the holiday season. The film has now generated nearly $300 million in global ticket sales, an unusually strong showing for an original movie with a modest budget. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
There's just 1 week to go until Valentine's Day. So head to your local Asda in London. Get a single red rose for just £2. Gifts they'll adore at prices you'll love. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Available from 12th of February.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see 3 men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
I spy with my little eye something beginning with B.
Bike.
Nope. Banana tree.
Oh, of course. We must have missed it.
Although you might not be able to see it, your small actions can have a real impact with Shell. Drive carbon neutral by filling up and using Shell Go Plus today. Make the change. Drive carbon neutral. Shell. Go well. See goplus.shell.com/CO2 for details.
For up to 50% off selected floors and beds. For first-class fitting. For kicking your heels off. For overexcited kids. And pets. For thrills and spills. For a special welcome home. For up to an additional £250 off your total flooring order. Carpet Right for life. Terms and conditions apply.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Despite never having used them, Alison Peartree was not initially a fan of purple bricks.
Because I heard from my uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker they don't have proper estate agents.
But Alison's uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker was wrong. Purple Bricks have experienced local agents ready to sell your home.
Turns out Martin from Purple Bricks was very knowledgeable. And he didn't charge commission. I've even recommended him to my sister's boyfriend's auntie's hairdresser, Sharon.
Purple Bricks. Book your free valuation today.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing service cost extra.
I am a force for good.
I am a force for courage.
And for calm.
I am a force for safety.
For fairness. For leadership.
I am a force for the future.
For compassion.
For my community.
I am a police officer. And I am a force for all.
Be one of the 20,000 new police officers and be a force for all that you believe in. Search Join the Police.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, Credit Suisse gets its first Swiss leader in nearly 2 decades, ousting TJTM. We'll talk about what this means for the bank going forward. Plus, we're going to take a look at the spreading coronavirus and the potential response to a pandemic. Right now, though, let's head over to Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
I'm here for you. Stocks are slumping amid speculation that the recent rally may have gone just too far too fast, and as concerns about the economic impact of the coronavirus overshadowed the strong American jobs numbers. Employers ramped up hiring in January, and wage gains rebounded, providing fresh evidence of a durable jobs market that backs the Federal Reserve decision to stop cutting interest rates. We check those markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. But first, Jeff Rosenberg steps in to tell us why we got those jobs number pops.
So I think you're seeing a little bit of a weather effect in this data. Construction was up 44,000, very strong. That may be taking down some of the headline market reaction because people are looking through that big 225. There was some weather, we had warmer weather in January. This was kind of expected. It's coming through. You get a big pop in educational health services. You're getting big pop in transportation. And retail wasn't as weak as it possibly could have been. It's still weak. It's down 8.
Jeff Rosenberg, Senior Portfolio Manager at BlackRock. We look at those numbers now. S&P is down 0.3%, down 10. The Dow's down 0.5%, down 154. And the Nasdaq's down 0.3%, down 32. The 10-year is up 14.30 seconds. The yield 1.59%. West Texas Intermediate crude's down 0.5% at 50.69 a barrel, while COMEX Gold is up 0.1% at 15.7160 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.66. The euro 109.60. The British pound $1.29.40. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It's 10:33 on Wall Street. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined by opinion columnist Elisa Martinuzzi. She covers all things finance for Bloomberg Opinion, based in London. Elisa, thanks so much for joining us. Boy, some more news at Credit Suisse. TJTM ousted as CEO. What happened?
Well, it's been a long time coming in that you've had a bank that has been tarred by a series of embarrassing leaks over the last 4 or 5 months or so, starting with the revelation that one of their former employees who had just jumped ship to rival UBS had been tailed by a contractor for the bank, and that triggered a sequence of events. There was an internal probe that found that the CEO wasn't aware that it was actually the COO who had orchestrated this, and then subsequently another incidence of corporate surveillance of one of the employees. And continuing to be followed by news about internal warfares, etc., etc. And this came to a head really in the last week, where it appeared, it was reported that the chairman was about to oust the CEO. Investors weighed in, backing the CEO, and it's today is the outcome of that boardroom battle sees Tidjane Thiam leave to be succeeded by the first Swiss-born CEO in almost 20 years atop the Swiss firm.
Initially, shares of Credit Suisse traded in Switzerland down. They still are down, but much less than they were initially, now down just 0.4%. Do we have any sense of the new path forward? Was this an issue with Tidjane Thiam's strategy, or a culture clash, or perhaps something personal?
Well, I think, you've had a strategy that he put in place, and this restructuring, which basically saw the bank shrink and shift more of the business towards wealth management and away from investment banking and volatile trading, that hasn't really yet delivered as much of the fruits as Tidjane would have liked by now. That was starting to come through, and I think we'll see some strong numbers on the fourth quarter when they report next week. So you had some questions over strategy just because it's taken so long for that to translate into better shareholder returns. On the other hand, yes, you've had this huge damage to the bank's franchise and reputation over what appears to be quite a bitter internal warfare, and certainly it's put a spotlight on the culture, but also on the governance of the bank. The CEO claiming not to know about what his COO was up to, and the board equally being in the dark about what its leadership was up to. It all points to certain concerns of controls and governance right across the firm.
What's interesting to me, Elisa, about this whole saga was that just recently in the last several days, some big shareholders of Credit Suisse came out in support of the ousted CEO, Thiam, yet the board still moved to oust him from the company. What's the situation there?
Well, of course, these were three large shareholders, but they're not the only shareholders. Bloomberg is reporting that other investors, including the Qataris, were backing the chairman on this. I think yes, you have to bear in mind that what we're seeing is not necessarily everything that's going on behind the scenes. But I think what's significant is really that from what I'm picking up, from what I'm reading, and from what we're hearing, is that this doesn't necessarily bring closure to this chapter. There's still an investigation ongoing by the local regulator into governance and controls, and you have a CEO now who will take over from Tidjane Thiam, whose remit is a little bit unclear, because in a year's time the chairman will definitely go. He's confirmed that he's only going to serve out maximum another year, and that leads to potential questions as to whether this is really a permanent CEO succession, or whether it's an interim step towards further strategic reviews further down the line, and perhaps a new management.
Elisa, I'm just wondering, what do you think that Credit Suisse needs to do in order to bolster their profitability?
Well, I think we'll learn a little bit more, these coming earnings next week in terms of how successful that restructuring has been. I think there's been a very strong shift towards lending, and particularly in the wealth management business, and particularly in Asia. And of course, we've seen, what's been happening in Hong Kong and the repercussions in the economy from the coronavirus, both in China and Hong Kong. There are some questions as to whether this very excessive growth in Asia, driven really by top line targets, is going to lead to potential more difficulty in delivering those shareholder returns.
Elisa Martinuzzi, thank you so much for being with us. Elisa Martinuzzi is a columnist covering finance for Bloomberg Opinion, joining us from London. You could read her columns, bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN. Go on the Bloomberg. Interesting to see the market response to the Credit Suisse news. Tidjane Thiam, after joining the bank as chief executive officer in 2015, departing, being pushed out, ousted after a battle in the boardroom. Right now in markets, we are seeing a sell-off, despite the fact that we got incredible jobs numbers, at least on a headline basis, people digging below it, seeing that perhaps a lot of this was due to weather. That said, some of the losses coming off, NASDAQ clawing back about half of today's decline, now down just 0.3%, same for the S&P. We are seeing yields grind lower as investors take a look around and say, well, we still don't see any inflation. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager with World and National Headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, President Trump has beaten back a lawsuit from more than 200 congressional Democrats who accuse him of violating the Constitution's emoluments clause by profiting from foreign government payments to his properties, including his namesake hotel in Washington, D.C. A federal appeals panel in Washington ruled members of the House and Senate lack the legal standing to sue the president, and they cannot participate in the debate. This legal win comes days after President Trump's acquittal at his Senate impeachment trial. Bloomberg's Amy Morris reports the White House is now thinking of dismissing a key figure from the House inquiry, National Security Council official Alexander Vindman.
Vindman is a decorated Army lieutenant colonel who sounded the alarm over the president's telephone call with the president of Ukraine and testified in President Trump's impeachment inquiry. But the deeper anxiety among many career national security officials is presidential retaliation against the foreign policy establishment. Firings, transfers, budget cuts, or staff reductions may be coming. Sources tell Bloomberg they're concerned Secretary of State Mike Pompeo won't shield them. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
Democratic presidential candidates are getting ready for their next debate before the New Hampshire primary. It's coming up tonight in Manchester. Even with the results of the Iowa caucuses still not fully resolved, all the precincts have reported Pete Buttigieg has a razor-thin lead over Bernie Sanders, but Democratic National Committee Chairman Tom Perez has called for a re-canvass. Even though those results may be muddled, they appear to be giving Buttigieg a bounce. A Boston Globe, WBZ-TV, Suffolk University poll taken this week shows Sanders at 24%, Buttigieg 23% in New Hampshire. Global news on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Vattel Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich? No. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. Are you...
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
5 is in! What a run! Touchdown, Kansas City!
Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs on winning their first Super Bowl in 50 years and second in franchise history.
50, Watkins, 10, chase to the 5, into the end zone, touchdown! That may be all she wrote!
While the NFL's 100th season may be over, football never stops on TuneIn. Search NFL Podcast to stay current with all the off-season wheeling and dealing.
And get ready for the 2020 NFL Draft in April.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade. Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA On Demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
Is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are down here in the U.S. following other markets around the world amid concern that the best week for the S&P in 8 months may have been a little bit too much. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P is down 0.3%, down 11. Dow's down 0.6%, down 182, and the Nasdaq's down 0.3%, down 30. The 10-year is up 15 30 seconds, the yield 1.59%. West Texas Intermediate crude's down 0.75% now at $50.57 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 0.1% at $15.71.80 an ounce. The dollar yen, 109.69. The euro, $1.0974, and the British pound, $1.29.48. AbbVie shares are up the most in more than a year after the company set upbeat expectations for 2020, even as their blockbuster inflammation drug Humira faces competition abroad from cheaper rivals. AbbVie is up nearly 5%. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
As we sit here and we track the spread of the coronavirus, there is a realization that even if developed nations are cracking down on trade, the world is still getting more global, at least when it comes to people and viruses moving around. And then there is a growing concern that we are ill-equipped to handle another pandemic. Joining us now is Robert Langreth, healthcare reporter for Bloomberg News, who wrote an incredibly interesting and frightening, frankly, story for Bloomberg Business Week about a potential pandemic. I just want to start with this quote from the World Health Organization. Epidemics in the 21st century are spreading faster and farther than ever. Outbreaks that were previously localized can now become global very rapidly. Robert, why is that?
Well, that's absolutely true. We just have a world with much more populations, much more interconnected than ever before. And even you may remember one of the first scary emerging viruses, SARS, one of the last ones to come out of China that killed about 800 people in 2003. And now this coronavirus is the next emerging virus to come out of China. And the difference is it's spreading, much faster because even since 2003, there are just so many more discount plane flights and so many more, high-speed trains. So people just from all over China and Southeast Asia travel so much more than they used to. So a virus that emerges, somewhere out in the world just gets all around the world, much more quickly than it used to. And it probably is the case that, years and decades ago, we had a lot of, emerging viruses that hit some obscure city out in the developing world somewhere and just didn't spread that far and kind of died out before we even kind of heard of it. Now, these things spread everywhere around the world.
Robert, just, given, I know we're early days of this coronavirus, but kind of what's the thought out there in the health community about China's response to this coronavirus?
Well, the problem is, obviously China is doing a very aggressive, response now and has basically locked down a whole city, a whole, province of 60 million people, and, sort of an unprecedented quarantine there. The problem is that in the kind of key early weeks of the virus spreading, it didn't really communicate much what was going on, internally, and the big response didn't begin until several weeks into it because apparently local officials are waiting for the top level Communist parties for what to do and what they could say, and so that basically allowed it to spread before people really knew what a big deal what it was for 2 or 3 weeks before the heavy response. And that's sort of the key period. It's sort of you're going to need to slow these things down right away or nip them in the bud. And when that doesn't happen, that allows them to escape.
The headline of the piece that you wrote for the magazine, Man versus Microbe, we're not ready for the next global virus outbreak. And I'm wondering whether we can glean any insights from the spread of the coronavirus and extrapolate out, why is this the case? Why are we unprepared?
Well, one of the problems that happens is that, we have lots of scientific smarts, and there has been real progress in better testing and drug development, and new gene sequencing technologies. So we know exactly what's in this coronavirus very quickly. But kind of what's missing really is a long-term focus. Every time, they call it the cycle of panic and neglect. Every time there's a new outbreak, there's global panic, there's momentary resolve, and then kind of a few years later we kind of forget about it, it fades away, and that kind of gives away to kind of inaction. And the problem is we're only as prepared as our weakest link. So it doesn't matter if the CDC does a great job inside the United States if we haven't provided support to developing countries so they have some first responders that can identify emerging outbreaks right away.
What does it mean to be prepared? Is it just in terms of the sanitary equipment and testing kits? How can you be prepared for something if you don't even know what the virus is?
Well, there's like two different things here. One is that, well, I'll give you an example. The Ebola outbreak in West Africa in 2014 or so. Now, that killed more than 11,000 people. But it's not that Ebola was an unknown virus. What happened there was it took literally, the thing was brewing in Guinea for 3 full months and expanding before the wider world knew. And that allowed it a chance to reach cities. So if there had been some, first responders, some better, little bit of better infrastructure there, not a lot, but just enough to recognize and do tests right away, we could have nipped that in the bud, and that wouldn't have killed anywhere near as many people. So that's the one thing. Another thing is that, that's a real problem, and people think that one of the places where this current coronavirus originated or spread to people is in one of these food markets in China and Southeast Asia called wet markets. That's where live animals and freshly slaughtered unwrapped meat kind of commingle with lots of shoppers, and they have live animals there in cages, often stacked on top of each other, different types of live animals. So they're very unsanitary. They teem with germs. They're these perfect breeding grounds for deadly pathogens. And a lot of the health experts we talked to said these really need to be shut down. They're just not safe, not in the new interconnected world, and it just provides too much opportunity for an emerging virus to kind of mix around the different animals and then spread on to people. And that's what we think probably happened with this virus from Wuhan.
So, Robert, one of the areas of focus has been on kind of the healthcare industry, big pharma, the ability to come up with maybe antidotes or just vaccines or something like that for something that pops up. Is that a fair criticism? Do you think big pharma should respond better or more quickly?
Well, the problem is, for an emerging virus, they're kind of, it's not a regular market. There isn't a regular market for, disease that doesn't exist yet, or a vaccine like this, where we just, don't know what the market could be. We don't know what this is going to be doing a year from now, whether it's going to disappear entirely, whether it's still going to be here with us, but it's contained in China, or whether it's going to be something, that's endemic in the population and we need to vaccinate like influenza. So that means it's just kind of not a regular market for drug companies to go after. And people, top thinkers like Bill Gates says we need to treat this possibility of pandemics, more likely prepare for a war, kind of as a national security threat, and we don't really do that. We need because.
Robert, just real quickly here, I'm wondering about the Chinese doctor who initially was sanctioned for warning about the deadly Wuhan coronavirus outbreak. And that was back in December. And there is a concern that perhaps this was spreading for a lot longer within China. And there was a political incentive not to really disclose it because of the ongoing trade negotiations. Have you heard any discussion to that effect, or is that just a conspiracy theory and rumor at this point?
Well, I don't know about the link to the trade negotiations in particular. I don't know that, but certainly there is a concern that for whatever reason the Chinese provincial officials were trying to keep talk about this down, not say a lot about this. It certainly seems like, I think that, they didn't announce there was definite human-to-human transmission until just 1 or 2 or a few days before they kind of locked down the whole city. And it certainly seems like, looking back at it, there's pretty clear evidence, and they should have known well before that there was human-to-human transmission. So certainly there does appear to be been an effort to underplay this, or at least minimize this, for, several weeks. And now it's just not clear was that because the officials of the province were timid and they kind of wait for Beijing to tell them what to do. It's really not clear what was going on there. The information coming out of China now is so kind of murky and confusing and hard to know, what's true and, what's not true. Even with the death of this doctor, first we heard he was dead, then they started to retract it and they're trying to say this.
Hey, Robert, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for that. Robert Langrath, healthcare reporter for Bloomberg News, with this latest, it's actually a Bloomberg Business Week cover story, man versus microbe. Very timely look at pathogens and disease in the case of the coronavirus. This is Bloomberg.
That's keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
5 is in! What a run! Touchdown, Kansas City!
Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs on winning their first Super Bowl in 50 years and second in franchise history.
50, Watkins 10, chase to the 5, into the end zone, touchdown! That may be all she wrote!
While the NFL's 100th season may be over, football never stops on TuneIn. Search NFL Podcast to stay current with all the off-season wheeling and dealing. And get ready for the 2020 NFL Draft in April.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Where's your views on the municipal bond landscape?
The market does not like uncertainty, does not react well to uncertainty.
There's a whole lot of optimism around the valuation of Uber.
What is Ford saying about the self-driving car?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Maybe we're getting hooked on debt and low interest rates.
The black hole called power could be a bigger black hole.
Only buy IPO stock that you can't get. If you can get it, it's probably a dog you don't want.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up over the next hour on Bloomberg Markets, we're going to take a look at Uber finally turning a profit and not burning through cash. They're getting rewarded in the stock market with shares up 8%. Also, we're getting this just crossing the Bloomberg with the Fed saying the downside risks eased in late last year, but the virus is a new threat. We'll dig into the economy and the jobs numbers. Right now, though, let's get the numbers. Greg Jarrett has that for us with the Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Speaking to the coronavirus, Lisa, the S&P snapped a 4-day winning streak while drops in miners and car makers led the stocks. Europe 600 index lower yields on 10-year treasuries fell below 1.6% after data showed U.S. employers hired at a faster than expected pace in January as wage gains rebounded. Luxury retailer Burberry slipped after scrapping guidance over the virus hitting sales in China. Jeremy Stretch, CIBC head of FX strategy, tells Bloomberg part of the coronavirus effect is a return to safe currencies.
Yes, that's right. So we are continuing to be braced for this safe haven flow and safe haven impact. Of course, only a week ago we had month end and we saw the dollar getting a little bit sold off in terms of month end rebalancing. But now subsequently we've seen investors moving back towards the safety and liquidity of the US dollar. But also, of course, we're seeing some of those yen crosses proving to be very much a barometer, if you like, of risk appetite and risk dynamics.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.4%, down 13. The Dow's down 0.75%, down 216, and the Nasdaq's down 0.4%, down 37. The 10-year is up 17.30. The yield is 1.58%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is down 0.75% at $50.57 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 0.1% at $15.7220 per ounce. The dollar yen stands at 109.74. The euro is $1.0965, and the British pound $29.36. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets continues now with Lisa and Paul.
Greg Jarrett, thank you so much. We certainly have a risk-off feel to the market today. The S&P off about 0.4%. To get a sense of what's going on in the world of small and mid-caps, we welcome Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. Dave, what are you looking at?
Well, Lisa, it's one of those days where smaller companies are doing worse than larger ones.
Those seem to happen a lot these days, Dave.
Yeah, they do. And in fact, the Russell is now lower for the year as well. It's down 0.9% today, and the S&P 500 is only lower by 0.4%. Now, the Russell steepest drop belongs to Zogenix, whose ticker is ZGNX. The drug developer has fallen 31.5%. Study results showed a proposed treatment for a form of epilepsy was less effective than a drug from the UK's GW Pharma. Now, Myriad Genetics, ticker MYGN, has lost 30.5%. Earnings and sales at the genetic testing equipment maker were far below analyst average estimates in a Bloomberg survey for the third straight quarter. CEO Mark Capone resigned, effective immediately. And LeMaitre Vascular, ticker LMAT, has slipped about 16.5%. The medical device maker's first quarter earnings forecast trailed estimates. Russell's biggest gain belongs to Assertio Therapeutics, ticker ASRT. The drug maker has risen more than 45% after agreeing to sell U.S. rights to the painkiller Nucynta to Collegium Pharmaceuticals for $375 million. Now, Collegium's also in the Russell. Its ticker is COLL, and it's up almost 18.5%. One more for you. Synaptics, ticker SYNA, has risen more than 16.5%. The touchpad maker's fiscal second quarter results were well above estimates.
Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, thank you. I really do love this segment so much. I just want to give a little perspective to it. Since the beginning of 2018, so basically over the past 2 years, we have seen the S&P return nearly 24% versus 7.4% for the Russell 2000. This is the higher beta kind of trade, and they should be doing well if you buy into the idea of the dynamism of the U.S. economy. Lots to dig in there.
And we heard some strategists. There was a call for 2020.
Right.
This is the year for small caps.
And it's failing. But
I'll just point out one detail, courtesy of the Bloomberg Terminal. Tech stocks, the S&P 500, most heavily weighted group, about 25% of the index's value. You look at the Russell, it's only about half that.
There you go.
There's so much. We're going to have to just do lots of segments on this, actually every day at 11 a.m. Eastern. Right now, let's shift gears to Uber. Uber share is on fire after reporting that they're not actually burning through cash right now. Mandeep Singh joining us here in our Interactive Broker Studios, senior tech industry analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. So how did Uber do it? How did they stop burning cash?
Well, so they've started exiting certain unprofitable markets. We heard about South Korea and India, and both of them were a $200 million drag on EBITDA, each of those markets. So you kind of see the playbook here. They want to focus on the premium category, the profitable markets where they can raise prices, and it seems like they can do it successfully because the trip growth, the unit volume didn't decelerate that much because of price increases. And they're really going to, exit all the unprofitable markets. So at this point, there is no geographic expansion.
All right, talk to us about Uber Eats. That's been a drag on profitability. Is the company still committed to that business?
It is, and so that's why certain countries are profitable for Uber Eats. That's where they have less competition when it comes to Eats. There aren't, 4 players competing for market share like it is in certain cities and countries. And so they're just going to focus on that bundled value proposition. Our view is eventually these companies will try to get to a subscription model. They've been tinkering with this idea of, Lyft Pass, or in Uber's case, a subscription ride, for 10 rides, you pay this much amount. And that's where the bundled offering comes in, because if you have more services, food delivery, grocery delivery, that's going to be more attractive for somebody paying a subscription fee.
When I saw the headline and when I was reading through the story, my gut feeling was they're making money because they're able to raise prices for people who all take Ubers. And I'm wondering, are we getting to that point where we've had enough saturation that the Ubers and the Lyfts can actually start charging people more?
Yeah, so it looks like that, especially, Uber and Lyft give you the convenience, and it's an urban phenomenon, right? So for people living in cities who don't want to own, cars, this service is kind of has a value proposition, and that's where they are seeing that demand elasticity, even if they raise the prices by 5-10% for airport rides, for business rides. I think that's the premium category segment, which they highlighted they're doing exceptionally well in.
Yeah, certainly in New York City, where at the LaGuardia Airport, you can't get a cab unless you take a bus to another location because they're doing construction, but you can get Ubers if you just walk out of the terminal. I digress.
Little pricing power.
Carry on.
Yeah. So real quickly, is there any concern here that the CEO is cutting back on investments that could drive future growth? When I see him pull the profit number a year forward, I'm a little concerned that maybe they're not investing as where they should be.
So Uber gives you a pretty good disclosure in terms of how much they're spending on R&D and the autonomous side. So that's the wild card, right? We don't know when the autonomous car will be, ready. And so what we have seen so far is they haven't curtailed spending on the autonomous side. And that's also a drag on EBITDA margins. So when you look at the overall EBITDA margins for Uber, they're still negative. Even the ride sharing has got EBITDA margins of around 20% plus. The reason it's negative is because they're investing in autonomous, they're investing in Eats. So I think they're just being wise about the geographic expansion, and certain markets are just not, that attractive.
Mandeep Singh, thanks so much for joining us. Mandeep is a senior tech analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. And I have to admit, Mandeep's been positive on this story, on the Uber story, really even when the stock was, getting crushed here. So there's a little sense here that maybe the company and stock has kind of found its footing here.
Yeah, although it's still below the IPO price.
Still below the IPO price. They have some work to do, yeah.
I have to wonder, as a consumer, whether this just means you're going to be paying a lot more.
I think you are, so we'll see. But Uber, the shares are up about 8% right here, trading at $40 a share. Year to date, up 35%. So again, the stock's starting to find its footing here. We'll see where it can go from here. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for World and National Headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan.
Paul, President Trump can claim another legal win over congressional Democrats on the same week of his impeachment acquittal in the Senate. A federal appeals court in Washington has dismissed a lawsuit from 215 Democrats who accuse the president of violating the Constitution's emoluments clause by profiting from foreign government payments at his namesake hotels and resorts. The Constitution does bar presidents from taking things of value from foreign governments without congressional approval. The Democrats were seeking a court order to that effect, but the three-judge panel ruled that the lawmakers don't have standing to sue the president. Democratic presidential candidates are prepping for their next debate tonight in New Hampshire. It'll be their first since the Iowa caucuses that remain too close to call after this week's reporting issues. Bloomberg's Kevin Cirilli reports from Manchester.
It's really, from a momentum standpoint, Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg who are claiming momentum. Elizabeth Warren has her task set out for her. She has to really be able to say that her campaign's still relevant. But finally, is that was devastating for former Vice President Joe Biden. He's not even really being attacked by the other candidates anymore. Now it really feels like the dynamic is Buttigieg and Bernie.
And the latest New Hampshire poll shows a bump for Buttigieg out of Iowa. He is now a point behind Sanders ahead of tonight's debate, which you can hear live on Bloomberg Radio beginning at 8 p.m. Wall Street time. The coronavirus in China has killed more than 200 people, infected more than 31,000. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says the CDC screened 27 passengers aboard a cruise ship docked in Bayonne who just arrived from China. 4 taken to the hospital. Murphy says the risk to residents remains low. Global news on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
A pack needs someone to follow.
It's got to be important for somebody to have a breakout moment.
Don't look now, but they're behind you.
Imports declined 2.8%.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Sources tell us that agreement is expected to include commitments on U.S. intellectual property.
With Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
Could we see that play into the results and the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Okay, kids, Dad's gonna teach you how to dance. First, spread your feet apart. Then, pump your knee, nod your head, shake your hips, and bite your lip ever so slightly. Now, with one hand in the air, point at people with the other hand. I call that the rock star.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume. Yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life.
Do you, Almond? They don't, Almond. They do, Almond. Don't, Almond. Do, Almond. Almonds provide natural protein and nutrients to help fuel your day. Do you, Almond?
WW Weight Watchers Reimagined have a new customised weight loss programme, MyWW, where no foods are off limit. Just fill out a simple assessment and get matched to a plan that suits you. You love eating carbs, cooking at home or eating out? No problem with this new customised plan. Discover which new MyWW plan can make losing weight easier for you. Join now and get 50% off your first 3 months. Offer ends 8th of February. Subscription fees and conditions apply. Mainland UK only. See website for details.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Oh. Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
I spy with my little eye something beginning with B.
Bike.
Nope. Banana tree.
Oh, of course. We must have missed it.
Although you might not be able to see it, your small actions can have a real impact with Shell. Drive carbon neutral by filling up and using Shell Go Plus today. Make the change. Drive carbon neutral. Shell. Go well. See goplus.shell.com/CO2 for details.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
At Wix, we'll create your dream kitchen from design to show-off ready and take care of everything. And now, save a third on showroom kitchen units. Book your free design appointment today. Cure your house embarrassment with Wix. For minimum spend, terms and exclusions, see wix.co.uk.
The S in Audi S-Line stands for many things like sporty, stylish, streamlined, and now seductively priced. Like the Audi Q2 S-Line, which you can now drive from £329 per month, £1,974 initial rental. Test drive one at your local Audi centre, but you'll have to be swift. The offer ends soon. Search Audi S-Line. Audi, Vorsprung durch Technik. With 36-month contract hire, 10,000 miles per annum, 18s and over, subject to status. Damage charges may apply. No ownership. Ordered by 31st of March 2020 from participating centres. Audi Financial Services. Visit audi.co.uk.
Plates. How many are you spinning today? You dart from one to the other. You steady one, another wobbles. Then suddenly you get an opportunity to spin a new one. You know better than we do how hard it is to run a business when you're on the move. Thankfully, EasyJet Plus membership means you can fast-track through security and shortcut to your seat without taking your eye off the ball. Or, the plate. Search business travel by EasyJet to find out more. Fast track at selected airports. T's and C's apply.
Lines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are down amid speculation the recent rally may have just been a little too much too soon, as concern about the economic impact of the coronavirus overshadowed data showing strong American jobs market. Treasuries are down, treasuries are up, and oil is down. Got that reversed. We check the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's down 0.3%, down 10. The Dow's down 0.6%, down 190, and the Nasdaq's down 0.3%, down 25. 10 years up 17.30 seconds. The yield is 1.58%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 0.2%, 50.86 a barrel. COMEX gold is little changed at $1,570. 1570.90 an ounce. The dollar yen, 109.76. The euro's $1.09.55. And the British pound, $1.29.25. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Now on Bloomberg Markets, Munis in Focus with Joe Mysak.
Focus on Munis is brought to you by Build America Mutual. Will you get paid if an earthquake puts your municipal bond investment on shaky ground? Yes, at AA guaranteed BAM municipal bond insurance protects against everything that causes a default. Visit buildamerica.com. Well, another strong start to the year for the municipal bond market, and strong enough that we've seen some interesting issuers come to the market. Jungle Gym refinances as cities embrace retail. Joe Mysak, editor, Bloomberg Brief, joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. Joe, what is Jungle Gyms and what are they doing with the money?
Jungle Gyms International Market. You know, you don't. Yeah, I was astounded.
Really, this is what we're talking about.
This is what we're talking about. We're leading off with this.
I had so many interesting questions.
No, we're going Jungle Gyms.
We're going straight to Jungle Gyms. Why are we talking about Jungle Gyms?
Come on, Jungle Gyms. It's a thing in central Ohio, in the suburb, in the Cincinnati suburbs. There's two of them, and one of them was established in 1971 as a produce stand, and the store was actually built, I think, in 75. And then kind of on the more eastern side of the suburbs, there's a new one that was set up in 2013, and they sold bonds back then.
But they're not a municipality. Why aren't they in a corporate debt market?
Right, and this is they're selling taxable municipals.
Okay.
Sold taxable municipals back then. Selling taxable municipals. They were supposed to sell this week. Selling next week. It's an enormous supermarket. It's this gorgeous extravaganza for foodies, and they are refinancing the old debt. Only from 2013, but interest rates have fallen, and they're also raising about $5 million for heating and air conditioning and roofing for the new store. And if you'll look at the website, I think
Cheese
Fest is this week.
It's this enormous place. Jungle Gyms?
I have not been to Jungle Gyms.
You're just doing this off the website, right?
But it reminds me of, I guess, like what, Stu Leonard's, like comparable?
I'm looking. Wow, it's really extravagant.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Aren't you glad Cigars, wine,
great.
liquor.
Okay, let's get back to the municipal bond market, okay? Because there's
cities are embracing retail.
Right. Okay.
It's not like the death of retail, the death of shopping malls. No.
Look at this. Yeah, big cheese festival. Okay, let's move forward. Okay. This is sort of indicative. The idea of a taxable municipal bond is indicative of the modern era of the municipal debt market, because it would be anathema to the municipal bond market of old, this idea that you would actually get taxed. And the whole point of it was that muni bonds would give you some tax exemption, and that was the reason why people were going into it. Just how, to use your phrase when you walked in, on fuego is it in the muni market these days?
It's going crazy. We carried a story earlier this week. Basically, with Citigroup saying, well, a lot of people are predicting that returns are going to be lackluster this year, and it's already had a big run up. No, we don't think so. It actually might return 7 or 8% again, compared to last year, and that's wow. And again, what are the reasons? The reasons we've been citing the last couple of years. You have the conservative nature of municipalities. Debt matures every year, so that's money that's taken out of the hands of investors, or it's bonds that are taken out of the hands of investors. They get cash, and that cash is looking for a new home, and they want to go back into the tax-exempt market. As you mentioned before, we started broadcasting, SALT tax. SALT has really had an impact on people's demand for municipal bonds, tax-exempt municipal bonds.
So, Joe, just give us a sense of where issuance ended up for 2019 and kind of what's the expectation for 2020.
Oh, man. I think last year it was over $400 billion. And this year they're predicting, 425, 450. 450 was on the top, and I would say it could be higher than that. Perhaps, maybe $500 billion, which would be an all-time record, of course.
I want to do something truly crazy and talk about the actual states and municipal bonds that are issuing this debt and Jungle Gyms. I'm curious about the financial condition of some of these local and state municipalities. Is it improving as spreads get tighter and tighter?
Well, okay.
Let's break it down. Come on.
It's a nuanced story. For one thing, I'm tired of hearing about states and municipalities invariably described as cash strapped, because they're not. The money, the tax revenue is flooding in. It's coming in over the gunnels. They don't have enough. They've cash galore. But yes, there are states and municipalities. Some of them are in worse shape than others. But right now, the rising tide is lifting all boats.
I just didn't realize this. I'm looking right now. Full to the gunnels is a phrase I've never heard before, so I had to look it up.
Over the gunnels. Come on, it's coming in.
This is from...
You can't bail the money.
It's a nautical term, right?
It's a British proverb. Anyway, carry on.
Okay.
Paul,
so, Joe, all right, so real quickly, what's the issuance you're looking for most in the next couple of weeks you think that market's really going to focus on?
Well, Fola Akinnaby, a reporter on the states and municipalities team, noted that last year we had almost $20 billion in transportation-related debt. I wouldn't be surprised to see more of that kind of debt coming to market. Over the gunnels.
Over the gunnels. Joe Bicek. All right, another week down.
No, you don't. What? No, you don't. I'm still talking.
Joe Bicek, who covers municipal bonds for us for Bloomberg Briefs, focused on the municipal debt market. And to be honest, I mean, it has been absolutely on fire. And one thing that's been really interesting is the international interest in the muni bond market, which is really new.
And the taxable municipal bond market.
And the taxable bond market, which is the reason why you can have this sort of conundrum of what's the point of using muni debt if you don't get a tax exemption. He's still talking from New York. This is Bloomberg Markets.
This is Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are lower on speculation the recent rally may have gone too far too fast, and on concerns about the economic impact of the coronavirus. The S&P 500 snapping a 4-day winning streak. Employers hired at a faster than expected pace in January. Payrolls increased by 225,000. The solid hiring defies expectations for a step down to a slower pace of job growth as businesses delay investment. Dunkin' Brands has temporarily closed about half of its Dunkin' and Baskin-Robbins locations in China due to the coronavirus. The company has also started a global task force and is distributing masks to its employees in China. And this weekend, the Academy Awards. Global theatrical receipts hit a new peak in 2019 of $42.5 billion. That's according to ComScore. Yet the number of tickets sold per person hit a 92-year low. In 2019, the average American visited a movie theater a third less than the peak in 2002. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Sweet strawberry icing. You're in Goodwill, and just past that vintage denim jacket you spot miniature donut earrings. You lean in. That's the scent of shopping success. Because at Goodwill, every item you buy funds local job training and more. So bring home those donut earrings and bring home so much good to your community. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/.
At Wix, we'll create your dream kitchen from design to show-off ready and take care of everything. And now, save a third on showroom kitchen units. Book your free design appointment today. Cure your house embarrassment with Wix. For minimum spend, terms and exclusions, see wix.co.uk.
They don't chant your name when you give blood, or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
The
The moment you realise you've drilled through an electric cable. The moment you realise that doesn't just mean no telly on the wall, but no telly full stop. The moment you realise you've got British Gas Home Care. And not just your electrics, but your plumbing, heating and drains are all covered. So the moment you've got a problem, make it our problem. British Gas, here to solve. Search British Gas Home Care.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London, Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
5 is in! What a run! Touchdown, Kansas City!
Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs on winning their first Super Bowl in 50 years and second in franchise history.
50, Watkins, 10, chase to the 5, into the end zone, touchdown! That may be all she wrote!
While the NFL's 100th season may be over, football never stops on TuneIn. Search NFL Podcast to stay current with all the off-season wheeling and dealing. And get ready for the 2020 NFL Draft in April.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown!
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Blowout jobs numbers. We'll break down the data with Tom Gumbel of LaSalle Network. Plus, we're going to take a look at the airlines business. JetBlue founders actually launching a new low-cost airline called Breeze Airways. We'll take a look. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
We're coming off earlier lows, Paul, with the NASDAQ coming back the most. We'll have those numbers in a second. The S&P has so far today snapped a 4-day winning streak, with the Federal Reserve warning the outbreak poses new risk to the economic outlook. This comes after fresh reports of further infections, more deaths, and more quarantines. Now we ask, who is spending the most and on what? Ellen Zentner at Morgan Stanley tells Bloomberg millennials are saving more than previous generations, but they're also spending more on some things.
They're spending more of their after-tax income on food, out of the home consumption. They're willing to spend more on organics, avocado toast, other things. They're more aware of what goes in their bodies. They care what goes in their bodies, and they're willing to spend a much greater share of their income on that.
Stay away from my avocados. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's down 0.1%, now down 5. The Dow's down 0.5%, down 141. And the NASDAQ is little change, down 2. The 10-year is up 14/32 with a yield of 1.59%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 0.1% at $15.90 a barrel. COMEX gold is little changed at $15.6920 an ounce. The dollar yen, 109.83. The euro, $1.0949. And the British pound, $1.2908. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
We got the latest U.S. jobs report out this morning. It was a blowout number, 225,000 jobs added. That was compared to estimates of economists surveyed by Bloomberg of 165,000. The market's response, negative. It took it as bad news. Joining us now to talk about the actual underlying market and why there could be such a negative response, Tom Gimbel. He is Chief Executive Officer of global staffing company LaSalle Network. Tom, can you give us a sense, was there anything in this report that was anything other than positive?
Well, I think people are always looking for there to be a bigger increase in wages. They're always looking to have a jump in participation rate. Aspect of what I always call the Chicken Little effect, that the better it gets, the more people are waiting for the sky to fall. And so there's that situation. But, when you're talking about the market and how they're seeing it, sometimes it is just serendipitous that the market goes down based on whatever the number is.
Tom, I know that you guys talk to a lot of companies out there. Are the companies out there finding that it's really hard to find talent and keep talent?
It is extremely hard to find talent. When you're looking at a 3.5% unemployment rate, even ticked up 0.1 of a point to 3.6%, it's really hard to find people. So what companies are doing is they're hiring a lot more recent college graduates. They are transitioning people. They're spending a lot more money on training and development is one of the leading areas that companies are investing in. And then also you're getting people to move, but the act of people, even executives, leaving one job for another, there's a little bit of hesitancy because they don't want to be the low man on the totem pole if the bottom does fall out.
This is interesting because we're hearing that the job gains are coming at the lower end of the totem pole when it comes to wages and skills in the jobs market. So if that's the case, and that's where we're seeing the additional jobs and the wage increases, why aren't we seeing them more at the top where skills are sort of more necessary?
The people don't exist, right? So the factory, if you will, of producing people is always going to be in college graduates and unskilled labor, if you will, call centers and customer service, people doing hospitality and service jobs. So when you have that, that's where it's going to be. There, you don't just find a surplus at 3.5% unemployment of $150,000 a year people.
Which is the question, again, about capital expenditure, about why we're not seeing companies spend more on training people and getting up the skills to fill these jobs if there just aren't the people. Why aren't we seeing more of that?
Well, I think we are. It takes time. So, every Fortune 500 company is different. Small to medium-sized companies have always been the engine for growth in this country. And so, but they're not going to have full, huge training and development. When you get to Fortune 500 companies to implement something like that at the level of jobs that it needs to be, there just isn't if you look at where the skills gap exists, the majority of jobs that companies need on the medium to bigger size companies are where there aren't people. You can't train somebody who's been a construction worker to be a data scientist. You can't take a salesperson and turn them into an accountant. So the aspect of training is very different for training and acclimating them for a job going up on a vertical level versus horizontal movement into a totally different category. And if someone's brain isn't programmed to be an engineer, you can't turn them into one.
Tom, are you seeing any regional, differences across the U.S. in terms of job demand, job creation? Is it still the Sun Belt is kind of the growth area, for example?
No, I'm seeing a lot more of the coasts bringing in higher volume jobs into the Midwest. So what we're seeing is that the cost of living and the cost of salaries on both coasts have gotten so high, and for non-technology driven jobs, non-developer, non-engineers, a lot of those jobs can be done from the Midwest. So you're starting to see kind of not a rebirth, but for lack of a better phrase, in Chicago, in St. Louis. I think it'll end up going into Detroit, and you're seeing more of that. Dallas continues to be a big hub of companies, and then obviously the Austin of the second Silicon Valley-esque type of environment. But you're going to see a lot more in the Midwest and continue to see that flourish.
Is that at the expense of the workforce in the big cities on the coasts?
No, because the companies that are there still have huge hubs, whether it's San Francisco with LinkedIn and Oracle and and Apple, obviously, and Facebook and what's there. They have so many huge companies out there. And on the East Coast with the financial services of Fidelity and Goldman and what have you in financial services, that those are still going to be there. But if you look at, it's not necessarily the Midwest, but Salt Lake City is a huge hotbed for hiring right now, has been for probably the last half decade. And Goldman Sachs has a huge office in Salt Lake City.
Tom Gimbel, thank you so much for joining us. Tom is the founder and CEO of LaSalle Network based in Chicago, helping us break down the jobs numbers today. 225,000 jobs added in the latest month. Wages up about 3.1%. So, and just some continued strength in the job sector, driving continued strength in the U.S. consumer, driving continued strength in the U.S. economy. That has been the story. That continues to be the story in the U.S. Looking at the markets here, the S&P down 6, Dow down 173, NASDAQ down 6 here to end the week. Looking at the Treasury market, up 15-30 seconds, pushing a 10-year yield down to 1.58%. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for world and national headlines. Nathan.
Paul, more than 24 passengers on a Royal Caribbean cruise ship in Bayonne, New Jersey were screened for coronavirus today. It's the first time something like this has happened in the U.S. since the outbreak that's now killed more than 600 people in China. Governor Phil Murphy says Centers for Disease Control teams screened 27 passengers who had recently traveled to mainland China. 23 were cleared, 4 taken to a nearby hospital. Murphy says the risk to residents remains low. President Trump can say he's been cleared in his latest legal battle with Democrats. A federal appeals panel in Washington has ruled that more than 200 congressional Democrats lack the legal standing to sue the president in a debate over whether he is violating the Constitution's emoluments clause by accepting payments from foreign governments at his hotels. The next Democratic presidential debate is just hours away in Manchester, New Hampshire. Bernie Sanders gave a bit of a preview this morning at a politics and eggs breakfast at St. Anselm College.
I think they would all say what I'm going to say to you now. And that is, no matter who wins this nomination, obviously I hope it's myself, all of us will get behind the winner and do everything we humanly can to defeat this most dangerous president.
Sanders went after fellow frontrunner Pete Buttigieg and his, quote, billionaire backers, saying billionaires control not only our economy, but our political ideas. The New Hampshire debate airs live on Bloomberg Radio tonight at 8 Wall Street time. President Trump says the House should expunge his impeachment because it was, as he put it, a hoax. The president spoke to reporters outside the White House before heading to Charlotte, North Carolina for an economic event today. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nathan Hager. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
TSB's Fix and Flex loan offers one of the best rates you can get. 2.9% APR representative fixed for up to 5 years. And the freedom to pay more whenever you want, or even take a break if you like. Because no one can really predict what the future holds. On loans from £7,500 to £25,000, subject to status, UK residents only, over 21. Based on de facto data January 2020. Up to 2 repayment holidays a year subject to approval.
It's already chilly in London, and you know that dodgy boiler is on its last legs. So if the thought of no heating makes you break out in a cold sweat, talk to British Gas. You can spread the cost of a new boiler interest-free over 2 years and get £200 off when you get a quote by the 29th of February, or £400 off for existing home care customers. British Gas, here to solve. Search British Gas new boiler. Conditions apply.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking, and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
5 is in! What a run! Touchdown, Kansas City!
Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs on winning their first Super Bowl in 50 years and second in franchise history.
50, Watkins, 10, chase to the 5, into the end zone, touchdown! That may be all she wrote!
While the NFL's 100th season may be over, football never stops on TuneIn. Search NFL Podcast to stay current with all the off-season wheeling and dealing. And get ready for the 2020 NFL Draft in April.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are coming off earlier losses sparked by renewed concern, those losses are, of the coronavirus, and that the coronavirus might slow global growth. We'll have more on that in a minute. Investors are speculating fresh signs of a strong labor market will mitigate any hit to the American economy. Treasuries are up. Let's look at the numbers as we do every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.3%, down 10. The Dow's down 0.7%, down 200. And the Nasdaq's down 0.2%, down 15. The 10-year is up 17, 30 seconds. The yield is 1.58%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 0.6% now at $50.66 per barrel. COMEX gold is up about 0.1% at 1571.10 per ounce. The dollar yen 109.78. The euro $1.0953, and the British pound $1.2902. Some examples of what's going on with the coronavirus effect. Supply chain disruptions are showing up around the world. Automakers, mobile phone makers, Toyota and Honda have extended their shutdowns at their China plants beyond the Lunar New Year, and Foxconn has warned employees to stay away from their facility in Shenzhen. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, we're about 2/3 of the way through earnings season, and we heard a whole host of CEOs from a whole host of industries talking about the impact of the coronavirus on their businesses, and none more so than the global travel business. To get a sense of what's going on with the U.S. airlines, we welcome Mary Schlangenstein. She's a U.S. airlines reporter for Bloomberg News, joining us on the phone from our Dallas bureau. Mary, thanks so much for joining us. We want to get to that JetBlue story. They're launching a new low-cost airline. But first, I just want to get your thoughts on kind of what you're seeing right here, right now, as it relates to the U.S. airlines and maybe how they're being impacted by the coronavirus.
Well, the U.S. carriers that fly to China have pretty much suspended their flights to mainland China. They've also suspended or are suspending Hong Kong routes, but on a little bit different time frame. For example, American Airlines is only suspending DFW to Hong Kong through February 20th, and United is suspending Hong Kong also to February 20th. So that's a little bit shorter suspension of flights than to mainland China. They aren't really talking yet about monetary damages or monetary losses related to these suspensions of flights.
Mary, so we'll keep watching to see whether there's any kind of financial impact, but interesting to see that they are suspending some of these flights. In the meantime, you wrote a story that got our attention because it seems like a time of consolidation in the airline industry, and yet the founder of JetBlue is trying to launch a new airline. It's on track to start flying this year, and it will focus on routes that primarily don't have anyone currently operating in them. Can you explain what this is?
Sure. David Neeleman, who founded JetBlue and has founded several other airlines, including Azul in Brazil, has decided he wants to get back into the U.S. aviation market. And so he's founding an airline called Breeze Airways. And what Neeleman says he's done is he's been able to go through, look at routes and pull out 500 potential city pairs. So that's, flying from city A to city B that don't have any nonstop competition. And those are the routes that he wants to focus on with this new airline. And he's planning to operate on mid-sized cities that maybe lost nonstop service as larger airlines combined, and then started to focus on building up their already established hubs.
Mary, I'm always fascinated when I see people getting into the airline business. It seems like such a brutally tough business with competition and the unions and jet fuel and all those types of things. It's a tough business. What's his cost advantage going to be to go up against some of these bigger players?
Well, Neeleman claims that he's going to get a big cost advantage from the size of the aircraft that he's going to fly. He's flying smaller planes, and also the fact that he's not going to fly every day of the week to every location, and there may even be times of the year where he doesn't fly. He's going to fly only on peak days, periods of peak demand. That's a very similar model to what Allegiant Airline flies, and they've been very successful with it.
How much room is there for another airline?
There's probably room for another airline. It's hard to tell from this this date, this point in time, how successful Neilman will be. He's certainly been successful in the past with WestJet in Canada, and then JetBlue. He founded JetBlue here in the United States. So he's been able to work some magic in the past, and we'll have to see if